Good evening, and let me say something that might completely change the way you think about your nightly routine. What you eat in those final hours before you close your eyes could be either silently damaging your brain or powerfully rebuilding it while you sleep. And I'm not talking about some wellness trend or a supplement company trying to sell you a bottle of something. I'm talking about real food sitting in your grocery store right now that researchers at some of the most respected institutions in the world have discovered can literally repair memory circuits, reduce brain inflammation, and grow new neural connections overnight. Most people over 60 are unknowingly starving their brains at the exact moment when the brain needs nutrition the most. Tonight, that changes. I've spent over 3 decades studying how food interacts with the human body at a cellular level. What I'm about to share with you comes from cutting-edge neuroscience, and I promise you, your doctor has probably never mentioned any of this in a 10-minute appointment. Now, before we get into the list, I have to tell you about a study that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. Researchers at the University of Toronto published findings showing that targeted nutritional intake in the evening hours, specifically within 90 minutes of sleep, improved memory consolidation scores by up to 43% in adults over the age of 65, compared to those who ate nothing or ate the wrong things before bed. 43%. That is not a small number. That is the difference between remembering where you put your keys and spending 20 minutes why brain repair happens overnight, searching the house every single morning. That is the difference between recalling your grandchildren's birthdays and feeling that painful moment of blankness that so many of my patients describe as one of the most frightening experiences of aging. And here's the thing I want you to hold on to before we dive into the full list. The number one food on this countdown, the most powerful brain repairing food you can eat before bed, is something almost everyone over 70 has been told to avoid. I'll reveal it at the end, and I think it's going to genuinely surprise you. Stay with me all the way through because that final one is the one I recommend most urgently to my patients. But first, I want to hear from you. Before we go any further, drop a comment below and tell me your age and whether you've noticed any changes in your memory or mental sharpness over the last few years. I personally read every single comment on this channel, and your answer helps me make sure I'm giving you the most relevant information possible. We have a remarkable community here of people just like you who are taking their health into their own hands, and I want to know you're here. Now, let's get into it. We're counting down from 5 to 1, ranked from beneficial all the way up to the most powerful brain-repairing food you can eat before bed. Let's start with number 5. Number 5 on our list is tart cherry juice, and what it does to your sleeping brain is something understanding the glymphatic system researchers are only beginning to fully understand. Most people think of cherries as a summer snack, something sweet and seasonal. But tart cherries, specifically the Montmorency variety, contain one of the highest concentrations of naturally occurring melatonin found in any food on the planet, combined with a class of anti-inflammatory compounds called anthocyanins that have a very specific and remarkable effect on aging brain tissue. Here's the science, and I'll keep it accessible because this is important. As we age, our brains accumulate something called neuroinflammation, which is essentially a low-grade chronic inflammation inside the brain itself. Think of neuroinflammation like a traffic jam on the brain's communication highways. The signals still try to get through, but everything slows down. Connections get disrupted, and memories have trouble forming and being retrieved. After the age of 70, neuroinflammation increases significantly in most people, and it is now considered by researchers at the Cleveland Clinic to be one of the primary drivers of age-related memory decline. Tart cherry juice attacks this problem from two directions simultaneously. The anthocyanins cross what's called the blood-brain barrier, which is essentially the brain security checkpoint that most substances can't get through. Once inside, they suppress inflammatory proteins called cytokines that are directly responsible for damaging the neurons involved in memory storage. At the same time, the natural melatonin in the juice helps regulate your sleep architecture, specifically increasing the amount of deep slow-wave sleep you get, which is the stage when your brain performs its most intensive memory consolidation work. A study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that adults over 65 who consumed 8 ounces of tart cherry juice nightly for 12 weeks showed a 24% improvement in sleep efficiency and significantly better scores on episodic memory tests, which measure your ability to recall specific personal experiences and events. For aging bodies specifically, this matters even more than it would for a younger person, because after 65, your body's natural melatonin production drops by as much as 50% compared to your younger years. You're working with half the sleep-regulating chemistry you once had, which means your brain is spending less time in the restorative stages of sleep where memory repair actually happens. Tart cherry juice helps compensate for that deficit in a way that is natural, gentle, and has virtually no side effects. Here's how to use it practically. Drink 8 ounces of pure, unsweetened tart cherry juice about 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Make sure it says Montmorency tart cherry on the label, not sweet cherry, because the composition is entirely different. If the tartness is difficult, you can dilute it with a small amount of water, but try not to add sugar, which would counteract the anti-inflammatory benefits. For enhanced absorption, pair your tart cherry juice with a small amount of healthy fat, even just a few walnut halves or a teaspoon of olive oil on a cracker. The anthocyanins are fat-soluble compounds, meaning they absorb more efficiently into your bloodstream. Food number 1. Tart cherry juice when consumed alongside a small amount of fat. I'll talk more about walnuts when we get to item number 3, because the combination of these two things is genuinely extraordinary. Coming in at number 4 is a food that most seniors have in their kitchen right now, but almost nobody is eating it at the right time of day for maximum brain benefit. I'm talking about Greek yogurt, and specifically about what happens in your aging brain when you eat it in the hours before sleep. The reason Greek yogurt makes this list isn't primarily about the calcium or the protein, though those matter enormously for the aging body in their own right. The reason it's here is because of its exceptionally high concentration of tryptophan, which is an amino acid that serves as the direct precursor to serotonin. And serotonin, in turn, converts to melatonin. Think of tryptophan like a raw ingredient being delivered to a factory. Your brain takes the tryptophan, processes it into serotonin, and then transforms that serotonin into the melatonin that governs your sleep cycle. When you eat Greek yogurt before bed, you are essentially restocking your brain's production line with everything it needs to run overnight maintenance at full capacity. But here's where it gets particularly relevant for anyone over 60. There's a well-documented phenomenon in aging biology called anabolic resistance, which is the medical term for your body's reduced ability to use protein effectively as you get older. After the age of 70, your muscles and brain both become less efficient at extracting the building blocks from protein sources consumed during the day. However, research from Maastricht University in the Netherlands found that slow-digesting proteins consumed in the evening, specifically casein protein of the type found abundantly in Greek yogurt, are processed differently. Because casein digests slowly over 6 to 8 hours, it sustains amino acid availability throughout the night while you sleep, giving your aging metabolism a longer window to absorb and utilize what it needs. For the brain, this sustained amino acid availability means a continuous supply of the raw materials needed to repair synaptic connections, which are the junctions between brain cells where memories are physically stored. Every memory you have exists as a pattern of synaptic connections, and those connections require protein-derived compounds to maintain their structure. 1 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt contains approximately 17 to 20 grams of protein with a casein-dominant profile, making it one of the most brain-friendly bedtime foods in food number 2. Greek yogurt existence. A fascinating study out of Florida State University found that older adults who consumed 40 grams of casein protein before bed showed significantly greater overnight muscle protein synthesis and cognitive recovery markers compared to those who ate nothing. The researchers specifically noted improvements in what they called cognitive flexibility, your brain's ability to switch between tasks and thoughts fluidly, which is one of the first capacities to decline in normal aging. Take 1 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt, not the fat-free variety, because you need that fat for optimal nutrient absorption, and eat it about 45 minutes before bed. You can stir in a small amount of raw honey, which has its own remarkable properties I'll touch on in a moment, or add a few blueberries for an additional anthocyanin boost. Avoid adding granola or anything high in sugar or refined carbohydrates, as these spike insulin at bedtime and actively interfere with the brain repair processes we're trying to support. Now, I want to pause here and ask you something. If this information is opening your eyes the way it has opened the eyes of so many of my patients, please take a moment right now to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I release new videos every week specifically designed for people who are serious about protecting their brain health and their independence as they age. Every subscription tells me you want more of this, and it helps me reach the millions of seniors who are silently struggling and have never been given this information. Your support genuinely matters. Now, let's get into the top 3, and this is where things get really powerful. At number 3, and I want you to listen carefully here because this one often surprises people, we have walnuts. Not a handful of mixed nuts, not almonds, not cashews, specifically walnuts. And the reason comes down to a compound that is found in very few foods on Earth, and that has a direct, measurable, documented effect on the aging human brain. I had a patient, Margaret, 74 years old, retired schoolteacher from Burlington, Vermont. She came to me frustrated and frightened. She'd been misplacing things, losing the thread of conversations, forgetting the names of people she had known for decades. Her regular physician had told her this was simply normal aging, and there was nothing to be done. Margaret started eating a small handful of walnuts every night before bed as part of a broader protocol, and within 8 weeks she told me, and I remember her exact words, "It feels like someone turned a light back on." Now, I want to be careful here because I don't make miracle claims, and every person is different. But Margaret's experience reflects what the science consistently shows, and the science on walnuts and brain health is among the most robust in nutritional neuroscience. Walnuts are the only nut with a significant amount of a specific omega-3 fatty acid called alpha-linoic acid, or ALA, combined with a high concentration of polyphenols, and a unique antioxidant called ellagic acid. But the most significant compound in walnuts for brain health is their exceptionally high level of DHA precursors, which your body converts into docosahexaenoic acid, the fatty acid that makes up approximately 60% of your brain's structural fat. Think of DHA like the insulation around electrical wiring. Without sufficient DHA, the signals traveling between your brain cells become slow, distorted, and inefficient. After age 65, your brain's ability to synthesize and maintain DHA levels drops dramatically, and most people are severely deficient without knowing it. Food number 3. Walnuts research published in the Journal of Nutrition, Health, and Aging found that older adults who consumed walnuts regularly demonstrated significantly better memory scores, faster cognitive processing speeds, and greater mental flexibility than those who did not. A separate study from the University of California, Los Angeles, involving over 600 adults with an average age of 68, found that higher walnut consumption was associated with a 52% lower risk of poor cognitive function on standardized testing. 52%. That number should be on billboards. The reason timing matters for walnuts specifically is connected to your brain's overnight glymphatic cleaning system. During deep sleep, your brain activates what scientists now call the glymphatic system, a network of channels that flushes out metabolic waste, including the amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. This flushing process requires healthy brain cell membranes to function properly, and those membranes are built from the fatty acids that walnuts help supply. Eating walnuts before bed ensures that your body has the necessary building materials circulating in your bloodstream precisely when your glymphatic system needs the most. Eat between 1 and 1/2 ounces of raw or dry roasted walnuts, which is approximately a small handful or 14 walnut halves, about 60 minutes before sleep. Do not eat them roasted in oil or salted, as the added sodium and oxidized fats reduce the benefit. The synergy tip here is to pair your walnuts with the tart cherry juice we discussed at number 5. The combination of anthocyanins from the cherry juice and the polyphenols from the walnuts creates what researchers describe as a compounded anti-inflammatory effect in the brain, more powerful than either one alone. These two items together form what I sometimes call the brain's evening maintenance crew, and it costs less than $2 a night. At number 2, we have something that has been eaten by humans for thousands of years, that ancient physicians in multiple cultures prescribed for mental clarity, and that modern neuroscience is now validating in ways those ancient healers could never have imagined. We are talking about raw honey, and I need to be very specific about the type and the dose because the honey sitting in most people's pantries is a very different product from what I'm recommending. Raw unprocessed honey, specifically Manuka honey, or local raw wildflower honey, contains a remarkable compound called pinosymbrin, which is a flavonoid found in very few other dietary sources. Peninosabrin has been shown in research food number 4, raw honey at the University of Waikato in New Zealand, to promote the growth of new neurons in the hippocampus, which is the region of your brain most directly responsible for forming and storing new memories. The ability to grow new brain cells, a process called neurogenesis, was once believed to stop in early adulthood. We now know that neurogenesis continues throughout your entire life in the hippocampus, and that it can be both accelerated and inhibited by what you eat. Raw honey accelerates it. Processed sugar does the opposite. I want to take a moment to explain why this matters so much specifically for people over 65. After 75, your hippocampus shrinks at a rate of approximately 1 to 2% per year in the absence of active protective measures. That shrinkage is directly correlated with declining episodic memory, the kind of memory that lets you recall conversations, experiences, appointments, and the names of people you love. But researchers at the National Brain Research Center in India found that daily consumption of raw honey was associated with significantly increased BDNF levels, which stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for your brain. It promotes the growth, maintenance, and repair of neurons, and it is perhaps the single most important protein in the prevention of age-related cognitive decline. Adults over 60 typically have BDNF levels 30 to 40% lower than younger adults. Raw honey helps restore them. There is also the matter of honey's impact on cortisol, the stress hormone. Elevated cortisol at night is one of the most destructive forces in the aging brain. It literally kills hippocampal neurons with prolonged exposure, and it suppresses the deep sleep stages where memory consolidation occurs. Raw honey triggers a modest controlled insulin response that gently lowers cortisol levels in the bloodstream before sleep, essentially calming the chemical storm that would otherwise interrupt your brain's overnight repair work. Research from the University of Malaya showed that subjects who consumed raw honey before bed demonstrated significantly lower midnight cortisol levels and significantly higher scores on memory tests, administered the following morning compared to control groups. 1 to 2 teaspoons of raw honey taken about 30 minutes before bed is the optimal dose. More than 2 teaspoons begins to spike insulin too aggressively and can actually counteract the benefits. The honey should be raw and unheated because the processing and pasteurization that most commercial honey undergoes destroys the pinosin and the enzymatic compounds responsible for neurogenesis. Look for honey that is labeled raw and unfiltered, ideally from a local beekeeper or a trusted natural food source. Stirred into warm herbal tea, not hot water or hot tea above 40 degrees Celsius, as heat destroys the active compounds. Pair it with your Greek yogurt for the ultimate bedtime brain protocol, as the casein protein slows the release of honey sugars and extends the gentle cortisol-lowering effect throughout more of the night. I had another patient I want to tell you about, Robert, 71, a retired engineer from Scottsdale, Arizona. Robert was a meticulous man, the kind of person who had always prided himself on his sharp mind, his ability to solve complex problems, to remember technical specifications he hadn't reviewed in years. When he started struggling to recall the names of his neighbors and forgetting mid-sentence what he had intended to say, he described it as the most disorienting experience of his life. Food number 5. Fatty fish and DHA. Robert began what I call the evening brain protocol, which includes several of the foods on this list with raw honey as a cornerstone. After 10 weeks, he returned to my office genuinely emotional. He said he had started doing crossword puzzles again, something he had quietly stopped because they had become too frustrating. He said his wife had commented that he seemed like himself again. That is what we are talking about here. Not just test scores, real life reclaimed. And now we arrive at number 1, the most powerful brain-repairing food you can eat before bed. The one I told you most people over 70 have been advised to avoid, and the one that I consider to be the most important dietary intervention for cognitive longevity that I've encountered in my career. That food is fatty fish. Specifically, wild-caught salmon, sardines, or mackerel eaten as a light evening meal or substantial snack approximately 2 hours before bed. I know what many of you are thinking. You've been told to watch your cholesterol. You've been told that eating before bed leads to weight gain. You've been given a dozen reasons to be cautious around fish, especially in the evening. And I'm going to ask you to hold those concerns for just a moment while I show you what the science actually says, because the gap between the common wisdom many seniors have received about diet and what the research actually demonstrates has never been wider than it is on this specific topic. Wild-caught fatty fish is the most concentrated dietary source of preformed DHA and EPA, the two omega-3 fatty acids, the best timing before bed that are not merely beneficial for brain health, but are structurally essential to it. These are not compounds that improve brain function the way a vitamin might. These are literal building blocks of brain tissue. Your brain is approximately 60% fat by dry weight, and the single most important fat in that 60% is DHA. Every neuron in your brain is encased in a membrane made largely of DHA. Every synaptic connection, where memories are stored, requires DHA for structural integrity. Every signal that travels between brain cells, every thought you think, every memory you retrieve depends on the health of membranes that DHA maintains. Here is the critical aging-specific issue. After the age of 60, your liver's ability to convert plant-based omega-3s, the kind found in walnuts and flaxseed, into the DHA your brain actually uses, drops by roughly 60 to 70%. This means that for most people over 60, plant sources of omega-3 are providing a fraction of the DHA benefit that they would have provided in your 40s. The only way to ensure your brain is receiving adequate DHA is through direct consumption of preformed omega-3s, and the richest dietary source of those is fatty fish. Research from the Rush University Medical Center in Chicago, part of the Mistakes That May Harm Brain Health landmark Mind Diet study involving over 900 older adults, found that those who ate fish at least once per week had brains that were the equivalent of 11 years younger in terms of cognitive function compared to those who ate fish rarely or never. 11 years younger, not marginally better. A full decade's worth of aging, essentially reversed through a single dietary habit. The reason evening timing is particularly powerful for fatty fish comes back again to the glymphatic system, your brain's overnight cleaning mechanism. As I mentioned with walnuts, this system activates during deep sleep and flushes the metabolic waste products that accumulate during the day, including amyloid beta proteins associated with cognitive decline. This flushing process is dramatically more effective when brain cell membranes are rich in DHA, because healthy, flexible membranes allow the glymphatic fluid to move more freely through brain tissue. Researchers at the University of Rochester found that glymphatic clearance is up to 60% more efficient during sleep when subjects had adequate DHA levels compared to DHA-deficient counterparts. Eating fatty fish in the evening ensures peak DHA availability in your bloodstream during the hours when your brain's cleaning crew is working hardest. There are additional compounds in fatty fish that make it uniquely suited to this role. Wild salmon is rich in zeaxanthin, a carotenoid antioxidant that crosses the blood-brain barrier and is among the most potent neuroprotective compounds known to nutritional science. It is 20 times more powerful as an antioxidant than vitamin C, and it specifically targets the mitochondria inside neurons, which are the tiny energy-generating structures inside every brain cell. After 65, neuronal mitochondria begin to dysfunction at an accelerating rate, producing less energy and generating more damaging free radicals in the process. Think of it this way. Aging mitochondria are like aging power plants that produce less electricity and more pollution simultaneously. Zeaxanthin helps restore their function, increasing energy output and reducing oxidative damage in the very cells responsible for memory and cognition. Fatty fish is also exceptionally rich in final takeaways for adults, over 60 vitamin D3, vitamin B12, and selenium. three nutrients in which the majority of people over 65 are clinically deficient, all three of which play direct roles in neurological function and cognitive preservation. B12 deficiency alone is estimated to affect between 15 and 40% of adults over 60 and is directly linked to brain atrophy, memory loss, and mood disturbance. A single 4-ounce serving of wild salmon provides roughly 80% of the daily B12 requirement in a form that is among the most bioavailable of any dietary source. Researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden followed over 1,000 adults aged 60 to 90 for 7 years and found that those with the highest blood levels of omega-3 fatty acids at the beginning of the study showed 73% less hippocampal shrinkage over the 7-year period compared to those with the lowest levels. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. And please share this with someone you love who is over 60 because the information in this video could genuinely change the trajectory of their cognitive health. Leave me a comment below and tell me which of these 5 foods you're going to start with.